Welcome, Rebecca. Welcome to everyone to our very first episode on age, pension, super and retirement. I'd like to introduce our topic, which is an introduction to Centrelink. But first, I must introduce you to our wonderful guest. Rebecca has been an expert on our Facebook group since it began in 2023, October 2023. She's absolutely prolific with answering questions, creates great posts, polls, has an amazing yearning for learning, and is extremely generous with her time. The idea here is to help the listeners have a resource in this area. And Rebecca, if I could begin by saying thank you so much for what you've brought to this community. And if you could just say how it is that you know so much about Centrelink.
Well, thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, I just enjoy helping people understand more and understand better about things that are difficult for them. I guess it started years ago when I was a first-time mum and trying to navigate the Centrelink system for myself, looking at parental leave and family allowance and things like that, and helping my peers who also had questions about, who gets parental leave, who gets family allowance, how do we access this, all that kind of thing. And it's with sort of forums on the internet where we share information and share opinions. And I just noticed that there's a lot of misinformation going around. There's a lot of myths, misunderstandings about what Centrelink is for. People getting debts from Centrelink and not understanding why. People not claiming Centrelink because they don't think they're eligible for it or they don't understand the system. So I just really enjoy helping people to understand what's quite a complex system in some ways, and helping people understand age pension as well and how that works. Again, there's lots of misinformation and myths about who's eligible for age pension and who's not and all of that. So I just enjoy being able to explain things in simple terms to people. I've never worked for Centrelink. All the information is available on the website. I think I'm just good at researching on the computer and finding answers.
Good is an understatement. You're amazing at putting the information across in such an understandable and relatable way. I think you're right. You have tapped into an area that is often misunderstood, and hopefully beginning today we can get our listeners to start to understand some of the concepts within Centrelink, in particular age pension. But just to begin with, would you be able to give our listeners a bit of an introduction to Centrelink Payments, keeping in mind that we will cover many Centrelink payments in depth in upcoming episodes?
Sure. So Centrelink is, it's all the welfare system, I guess, in Australia, and Centrelink administers a lot of the welfare payments. The main one that we're going to talk about is age pension, which is the main payment for people who are retired or over a certain age who don't have enough money to support themselves in retirement. Centrelink also pays unemployment benefits, disability pension, carer payments for people who can't work because they're full-time caring for someone with a disability. There's also the payments for childcare subsidy and parental leave, family tax benefit, which is an allowance for families with young children. So there's a wide range of payments that they administer. And then there's also concession cards that they administer. So pension cards, healthcare card, Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. So there's no money with those cards, but they help people to access subsidised medication. For some people, bulk billed medical appointments, and concessions on your utility bills, registration for your car. There's lots of different concessions that you may be able to access if you hold one of these concession cards from Centrelink. And that's all administered by Centrelink. They do the means testing for each of those cards. Centrelink also manages means testing for aged care home packages and aged care, like residential aged care services. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they do, but yeah, the main thing that we are going to be sort of talking about is age pension and their payments for older people.
Well said, Rebecca. Well covered. And indeed, with the age pension, there's a sense sometimes in the online community that I see where people are being shamed. In fact, you can tell that some feel shame when they're talking about claiming the age pension, perhaps a part age pension. In fact, that's one of the drivers for starting the group, wanting to have a safe space so that this could be freely discussed. Would you mind commenting on why this should not be the case?
Yeah, so I guess there can be some stigma in terms of age pension being a welfare payment. It is a welfare payment. It's within the general sort of welfare payments that we have in Australia, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing to be claiming a welfare benefit. I see age pension as part of the sort of the overall tax transfer system. So some years you might earn a lot of money and you pay a certain amount of tax. Other years you might have no income, so you might be claiming a Centrelink benefit. And personally, I don't see there's anything wrong with claiming the benefits that you're eligible for from the wider community in the years that you're not able to provide for yourself. So yeah, we're all part of the community and we all contribute in different ways. For some people that's working and your taxes go to help run the country. For other people that's raising children or caring for someone with a disability. We all contribute in our different ways. And then when it's your time of need, when you're old enough to qualify for age pension, then you can access those same benefits that everyone else can based on your income and assets. So I guess some people might feel like, they never wanted to need to rely on the government, but I think it's okay to claim to access the payments that you're eligible based on your situation. Yeah, I'd like to see people just treating it a bit like, if you're lodging a tax return and there's a tax offset that you're eligible for, there's no shame in claiming a tax offset that is, for your situation. I think age pension in the same way that, when you're eligible for it, there needs to be no shame in claiming it. We shouldn't feel like, you're knocking on the door, cap in hand, saying, "Oh, please, government, will you, be so kind as to give me some money?" It's just all, like claiming a tax offset. You just claim what you're eligible for, and then you can use that money how you see fit for your living expenses.
I like that analogy, Rebecca, of claiming the tax offset. Nobody would think twice about it, and it puts it into perspective. Thank you so much for that. There's another misconception that is going around, and we often hear it in our Facebook group and other areas online, and that is that people say that they have a right to the age pension. Have you got an opinion on this myth?
Yeah, so I think some of our grandparents, if we look at the people we know in our families as older people, probably our grandparents were on age pension in their retirement years. And for that generation, it was probably basically everyone was on age pension because most people didn't have a huge amount in the way of assets. As the country has become more wealthier, a lot of people nowadays do have significant means of their own. So the idea that I'll be eligible for my age pension, I'll claim my age pension when I retire, I think we all have a right to be considered part of the community and to be able to access the benefits that we're eligible for. But we have to realise that it is all part of the welfare system, and the country can't afford to, has decided not to pay a universal amount, universal pension. So the same amount to every person who reaches a certain age. There's a bit of a myth that a certain part of our taxes went into a pension pot. Some countries do it that way, that a certain amount of your wages is taken and actually put into your own pension for the future. That doesn't happen in Australia. So I think sometimes it's ideas that have come from other countries that people assume happens here as well, but that doesn't happen in Australia. The pensions are paid for out of general revenue, so the taxes that are paid by everybody. So there's none of your own tax money has gone into your own pension pot, if that makes sense. So there's no right to a certain amount of money from the government per year because you've reached a certain age. It's all based on your income and assets testing. People of low means will be eligible for financial support from the government. People who are wealthier won't be eligible for that. As people get older, get towards their retirement, I think it's important that you look into these rules. Don't make assumptions. Don't rely on what you hear at a barbecue. It's important to look into it yourself and figure out what is available, what am I likely to be eligible for. Because I think it's certainly disappointing and confusing if you assume that you're eligible for something and then find out that you're not because maybe you have 2 investment properties, or maybe you have a spouse that's earning over $100,000 and you may assume you're eligible, but you're actually not. So yeah, it's good to look into it yourself without assuming that you're going to get some money from Centrelink.
Thanks, Rebecca. That makes so much sense in what you're saying. It used to be a certain way, or it was a way is a way in other countries. It's understandable when this sort of trickles down from perhaps barbecue conversations and that sort of thing. What else could people receive from Centrelink before they turn age 67?
Yeah, so some people are eligible for, so I mentioned before, the concession cards. So there's a concession card called the Low Income Healthcare Card, which does not have an age limit. So it's people of any age can apply for this if their income is low. Now, the income limit is quite low for this. So if you're working, you're probably not going to be eligible for it. But there's no asset test per se. So if say you've retired at 62 and you're living off your super, you're probably eligible for the low income card from Centrelink, and that helps you access concession rate PBS medications, bulk billing incentives for your GP, the lowest Medicare safety net threshold, and sometimes some concessions on bills as well. But the bills and things vary state by state. So if you would need to look on your state's concessions website to see exactly what concessions you're eligible for. But yeah, the low income card is a really helpful one for people who are retiring before age 67. You can't claim age pension itself until 67. Some people will claim a job seeker payment in their 60s, and they might work part-time or do volunteer work to meet the mutual obligation requirements for that payment. That you can't simply sort of retire and claim job seeker, but you can do volunteer work or part-time work to qualify. So that's another way that people can be supported or partially supported by the government in early retirement. And then once you turn 67, there is the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. Now this was a bit confusing because each state has their own card called a seniors card, which is a completely different thing. A seniors card from your state government is really just for some discounts at businesses, sometimes discounted or free train travel. And the requirements for the seniors card from the state government is a completely different thing. But the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card is only for people over 67 and only for people who are not eligible for age pension. Now, this card has a very generous income limit of about $99,000 per year for singles and $158,000 per year for couples. So most people over 67 would at least be eligible for that healthcare card. And again, there's no asset test for that healthcare card. So somebody could have an investment property, money in super, and other shares or term deposits in the bank. They don't look at the total assets you have. There's no particular asset limit. They just look at your tax return. So what was your adjusted taxable income on your tax return? And then they also look at how much money you have in super and apply a deemed rate of income, so an assumed rate of income on that amount in super. But based on the current rates, a couple could have up to $6 million in assets and still qualify for a Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. So the assets limit, there's no actual assets limit, but the income limit is very generous and it allows for a lot of people to benefit from that card.
Wow, that is actually fascinating about there not being an assets limit and people being able to have that much. But I think that's so helpful for those that feel like there's nothing for them. You mentioned lots of topics, Rebecca, that we're going to unpack in the upcoming episodes. I heard you mention assets and income test and things being deemed. It's such a complicated area. There is a lot to learn. A reminder to everyone that this is information only and never personal advice. Rebecca, I think this is a really fantastic overview, and thank you so much for spending this time not only in the group but also beginning to unpack this so that people who like to listen can tune in too. There's a lot of information to unpack, and I think there's a lot of material that we can enjoy understanding in the future.
I agree, Yvonne. Very happy to help explain things to people, and thank you for having me on today.
My absolute pleasure. Just a reminder for everybody that this is always only information and never personal advice. Thank you for listening. My name is Yvonne and I'm your host. Look forward to speaking to you again soon.